There was once a boy named Elijah. He wasn't like the other kids at Jefferson High School. While they ran through the halls, jumped the stairs two at a time, and played basketball on the weekends, Elijah sat quietly, in a wheelchair. He had been paralyzed from the waist down since he was 6. A car accident had taken more than just his ability to walk, it had taken his mother too. He barely remembered her face, only the warmth of her hugs and the sound of her humming a lullaby that no one else seemed to know. His father, Henry, worked 2 jobs just to keep them afloat. He was a mechanic during the day and a janitor at night. Their apartment was small, but Henry made it feel like home with little things. Hanging up Elijah's drawings on the fridge, making pancakes every Sunday, even when he could barely stand from exhaustion. But school. School was a war zone. Elijah tried not to be noticed, but in a place like Jefferson High, being different made you a target. "Move it, Wheels!" a boy barked behind him one morning. It was Trent Lawson. Tall, loud, the captain of the football team, and the son of a powerful local businessman. He had the kind of confidence only the rich and cruel carried. Trent shoved Elijah's wheelchair hard from behind, sending him rolling faster down the hall than he wanted. Elijah reached for the wheels to stop himself, but he crashed into a row of lockers. Laughter erupted around him. One girl, Madison, actually took a video and posted it on TikTok. The caption read, "Speed Racer hits the lockers again face with tears of joy #crippledrift." The video got 42,000 views. No teacher intervened. No one stopped it. They just walked by. Like it was normal. Elijah always sat alone during lunch. The cafeteria was a place of noise and chaos. Clanging trays, shouting kids, food flying through the air. But at his table, there was only silence. He would eat slowly, carefully unwrapping his sandwich, always the same one. Peanut butter and jelly, the cheap kind. Sometimes, he would look at the exit door and wonder what it would be like to just leave. Go somewhere. Anywhere. A place where people didn't laugh at him for being different. But he stayed. For his dad. "Rough day?" Henry would ask gently as he helped Elijah into bed. Elijah would just nod, not wanting to upset him. Henry already looked like he carried the weight of the world. But one night, Elijah finally broke. "They hate me, Dad," he whispered. "Everyone at school. They laugh at me. I don't want to go anymore." Henry's face fell. He crouched beside Elijah, his knees cracking. "Listen to me," he said softly. "You are more than that chair. You hear me? You've got more heart than any of those punks. They don't see it now, but one day they'll wish they had." Elijah didn't believe it, but he nodded anyway. A week later, something strange happened. Ms. Aldridge, the English teacher, announced the school's annual speech contest. Theme: What makes a hero? Elijah didn't sign up. He never did things like that. But Ms. Aldridge came to him after class. "I think you should enter," she said, crouching down beside his chair. "You've got something important to say." "No one listens to me," Elijah replied. "Then make them." Her words echoed in his mind for days. 2 weeks later, Elijah wheeled himself onto the stage. The auditorium was packed. Students, teachers, even parents. Laughter bubbled through the crowd the moment they saw him. Someone whispered loudly, "Did he take a wrong turn on his way to the hospital?" Elijah swallowed hard. His hands trembled on the paper in his lap. But then he looked out and saw his dad, sitting in the back row, beaming with pride. And he began. "My name is Elijah. I'm 17 years old. I can't walk. Not because I'm lazy. Not because I'm cursed. But because a drunk driver took my legs when I was 6. And my mom." Silence fell like a blanket. He continued, stronger now. "I used to think that made me broken. But heroes aren't perfect. They don't wear capes. They survive. They endure. And they love. Even when no one loves them back." The room was dead quiet. Being in this chair doesn't make me weak. Ignoring someone in this chair? That does. He finished to thunderous applause. Even the principal stood. But Trent. Trent just sat there, arms crossed, jaw clenched. The video of Elijah's speech went viral, but not in the mocking way his crash into the lockers had. This time, it was admiration. People shared it with captions like, "This boy just shut down every bully in America. Realest 3 minutes of my life. I cried. You will too." Suddenly, Elijah had messages from people all over the world. Kids in wheelchairs, parents, veterans, even celebrities reposted it. But back at school, things didn't change as much as he thought. One day, Elijah was wheeling home late after tutoring. The streets were dark, quiet. Then he heard tires. A car slowly rolled up behind him. It was Trent, and 2 of his football buddies. "Thought you were hot stuff now, huh?" Trent sneered, stepping out. "Mr. Inspirational." Elijah's heart pounded. They circled him. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," Trent growled. "You think you're better than me? I never said that. You didn't have to." Then, without warning, Trent kicked the side of Elijah's wheelchair. It toppled. Elijah hit the pavement hard. They laughed, walked away, left him there in the dark. It took Elijah over 30 minutes to crawl to the nearest driveway, where a woman called 911. The room smelled like bleach and plastic. Elijah lay in the hospital bed, motionless. Not because he was unconscious. No, he was wide awake. Just numb. His hands were scraped. His head throbbed. But none of it hurt as much as the silence. His dad sat beside him, fists clenched, eyes red. "They could have killed you," Henry muttered. "They left you." Elijah said nothing. He couldn't. "They won't get away with this. I swear to God." Henry stood up, pacing. But Elijah finally spoke. "Don't." "What?" "Don't go after them. It'll just make things worse. Worse than this." Henry snapped. Elijah closed his eyes. "Yes." They filed a report. The nurse insisted. The hospital documented everything. Bruises, trauma, even soil under Elijah's nails from where he crawled. But when the officer arrived and learned Trent Lawson was involved, his tone shifted. "We'll investigate," he said with a practiced smile. "But you know, boys will be boys." Henry nearly lunged across the room. Elijah grabbed his arm. "Let it go," he whispered. Henry didn't. When the story hit Reddit, posted by someone anonymous at school, it blew up again. Only this time, it wasn't a speech. It was rage. Photos of Elijah in the hospital bed circulated online. Hashtags like #JusticeForElijah, #ExpelTrent, and #WheelchairWarrior trended for days. Celebrities who once reposted his speech now called for action. Activists showed up at Jefferson High's gates. The school board panicked. They suspended Trent and his friends pending investigation. But no charges were filed. No arrests. When Elijah returned to school weeks later, things had changed. He was no longer invisible. Now everyone stared, but not with mockery. With shame. With awkwardness. With guilt. Students whispered apologies in hallways. Some offered to carry his books. Others gave him gifts, cards, candy, drawings. But none of it felt real. It was like they were trying to cover up their part in it all. Their silence. Their laughter. Their views on that TikTok video. Only one person truly said sorry. Madison. She stopped Elijah near the lockers, her eyes filled with tears. "I was awful," she said. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I'm sorry. I reposted that stupid video. I laughed. I was cruel." Elijah looked at her. Really looked at her. "You were," he said calmly. She nodded, accepting it. "But thank you for saying it." She broke down crying right there. He didn't comfort her. He just wheeled away. Elijah wasn't alone for long. A new student named Jonah transferred mid-year. He was quiet, awkward, always with a sketchpad in hand. And he, too, had a limp, the kind that made people whisper. They became friends fast. Not because of pity, but because they didn't have to explain themselves to each other. They just got it. That spring, a producer contacted Elijah. A Netflix team wanted to make a short documentary about his speech, what happened after, and his journey. At first, he refused. "This isn't a story," he told them. "It's my life." But then he saw how many kids wrote to him, thousands of messages, telling him he gave them hope, that he helped them face bullies, that they didn't feel invisible anymore. So he agreed. The doc was titled, Still Standing. Senior year was coming to an end. Elijah had been accepted into a university that had full accessibility and a scholarship for students with disabilities. It was a dream, but he wasn't excited. Something felt unfinished. The documentary aired 2 weeks before graduation. It was raw, unfiltered. His tears, his trauma, the night he was left in the dark, his dad's words. People called it one of the most moving stories Netflix had released that year. And then something happened that no one expected. Elijah got a DM from Trent. "Can we talk? In person? Please." At first, Elijah deleted it. But something inside gnawed at him. A few days later, he agreed. They met at the old park near school. Trent looked different. Pale, thin, nervous. "I deserved worse," he began. Elijah said nothing. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Trent continued. "But I want you to know. I lost my scholarship. My dad kicked me out. I'm working at a gas station now." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "And you think that makes us even?" "No," Trent said quietly. I think about that night every day." A long silence. "I hated you," Elijah finally said. "Because you made me hate me." Trent nodded. "I get it." Elijah wheeled away without another word. Graduation day. Elijah was chosen as the valedictorian. His dad cried before the ceremony. Held him like he was still 6 years old. Jonah cheered the loudest from the crowd. Elijah wheeled up to the podium. "This school tried to forget me, to erase me, because it didn't know what to do with someone like me." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. "But I didn't vanish. I spoke. I screamed. I crawled. And I survived." He paused. "Some people say I'm brave. I'm not. I was just tired of being ignored." He looked out over the sea of faces. If you remember anything from these 4 years, let it be this. Kindness is louder than cruelty. And pain doesn't disappear just because you look away. He rolled off stage to a standing ovation. Elijah didn't make it to university. 1 week after graduation, he was found unconscious in his bedroom. A rare spinal infection. Complications from an untreated injury that never healed right. The night Trent left him on the street. Doctors tried everything. But the damage was too far gone. Elijah slipped into a coma. The world went quiet. The news broke. Millions who had followed his story were stunned. Hashtags returned. Tributes poured in. Students lit candles on the school steps. Trent showed up, uninvited, and sobbed alone in the back row of the vigil. Madison placed a single sunflower by Elijah's wheelchair, left untouched in the auditorium. James's wheelchair sat still in the corner of the school's forgotten art room. Sunlight filtered through the dusty glass windows, casting long shadows across his pale hands. A week had passed since his funeral. The silence around the school was deafening, like a church after a sermon that ended with a confession no one was ready to hear. After the video of his death went viral, the community fractured. "How could this happen?" shouted the headline of the Weekly Gazette. Underneath, a grim photo. James slumped at the foot of the school's stairwell, blood dripping from the side of his head, his wheelchair overturned at the top. The footage showed it clearly. Trevor and Lexi had yanked his chair, laughing, mocking, not realizing that James's balance had been worsening for weeks. Doctors said his spine couldn't withstand another jolt. That last fall was fatal. What they thought was a joke was actually murder. The kind that doesn't need a gun, only cruelty. At the trial, the courtroom felt like a tomb. Trevor's once confident eyes were now red, swollen, permanently downcast. Lexi refused to speak. Her lawyer answered everything for her. Mrs. Cartwright, James's mother, sat silently beside a framed photo of her son. He was smiling in the picture, wearing a yellow hoodie that read "Dream big even if you can't walk." "I warned the school," she whispered when called to the stand. "I begged them to do something. James told me everything. Every push. Every slur. Every time someone accidentally tripped him." The prosecutor displayed James's journal. A simple red notebook with cartoon astronauts drawn on the cover. Day 142. They shoved me into the locker again. I didn't cry this time. Day 199. Trevor called me a parasite. Lexi laughed. Day 231. I dreamed I had wings. I flew over the school. No one could touch me. The jury broke within hours. The verdict: guilty. But James's death had already sentenced them all to something far worse than prison. Trevor's father, a well-known car dealership owner, had his business boycotted into bankruptcy. Lexi's mother, a dentist, was fired after a protest erupted in her office lobby. Even Principal Holland, who once told James's mom, "Kids will be kids," was forced to resign. She never apologized. Not once. 6 months later, the first James's Wings scholarship was awarded. It went to a girl named Elora, a 17-year-old in Minnesota who had lost both legs in a car crash and had been homeschooled ever since due to bullying at her old school. When they gave her the award, her parents read aloud a quote from James's journal. "Wings are just wheels with freedom." The room fell into tears. The video of her acceptance speech hit 12 million views within a week. In a classroom in Oregon, a boy named Mateo watched that video on repeat. He was 12. Born with brittle bone disease. He had been hiding his wheelchair behind oversized jeans and baggy hoodies for years. The next day, he came to school proudly, finally wearing shorts. When the class laughed, he didn't flinch. "I've got James's wings now," he said. The movement spread. T-shirts, posters, marches. The phrase, "Wings don't break," became a national chant. A statue of James was erected in front of the school where he died, his wheelchair turned into angelic wings of steel and bronze. His yellow hoodie cast in golden light. Trevor and Lexi, both out on parole after 2 years, were barred by law from ever approaching the school or James's mother. But they still watched from a distance. And it haunted them. A year after James's death, Mrs. Cartwright still hadn't entered his room. Not really. She kept the door closed. Left the bed untouched. His hoodie still hung from the chair by the desk. His Xbox controller still half buried under the sheets. But that night, on the anniversary of his death, she opened the door, sat on his bed, and wept. It was only when the tears stopped that she noticed something strange. A loose floorboard. She pulled it up and found a box. Dusty. Taped shut. Inside. Letters. Drawings. A USB drive. And a sealed envelope that read, "For the world, if something ever happens to me." The USB drive contained a single video file titled, "Don't Let Them Win, James C." She played it on his old laptop. James appeared on screen, pale, nervous, but steady. "If you're watching this, I guess it means something happened. Maybe they went too far. Maybe I finally gave up. But please, don't let them win. Don't let my silence be louder than their screams. If I die, I want my story to be louder than their jokes." He stared straight into the camera. "And if you can, forgive them. Not for them. For yourself." Mrs. Cartwright clutched her chest and sobbed. But she uploaded the video that night. By morning, it had 43 million views. Trevor watched the video alone in his one-room apartment above a pawn shop. He hadn't spoken to anyone from school in over a year. His parents had moved. He was working nights washing dishes at a 24-hour diner. He watched the clip 5 times. And then he vomited in the sink. Lexi, meanwhile, had vanished from the public eye. After her probation, she legally changed her name and left the state. But James's face followed her. Billboards. Bus stops. Murals. She drank. A lot. One night, In a bar bathroom in Atlanta, she carved into the mirror with a key. I still hear his voice. The envelope marked, "For the World," was handwritten. It was read live on CNN by James's mother during a nationally broadcast memorial service. Dear World, if you're reading this, then the worst thing has already happened. But don't feel sad for me. I lived a life most people only pretend to live. I felt pain. Real pain. And that means I felt real life. If you ever meet a kid like me, someone who moves different, talks different, is different, don't just be kind. Be brave. Stand next to them when it's unpopular. Speak up when no one else will. If you do that, I promise, I'll be there. In your courage. In your voice. In your wings. James C. People across the country read it aloud in classrooms, churches, on YouTube, on TikTok. Some said it felt like scripture. Trevor returned to Jefferson High on a cold October night. Not legally, he snuck in through the broken fence behind the gym. He found the old library, still abandoned after the protests. Found the 10th grade yearbook. Page 54. There he was. Smiling. There James was, 2 rows down. Barely visible behind a glare in the photo. Trevor poured lighter fluid on the page and struck a match. But he couldn't do it. He screamed, slammed the book closed, and collapsed sobbing into the dust. Following the exposure of James's secret video, new legislation was proposed in his name. The James Cartwright Bill, requiring every school to implement a national anti-disability bullying curriculum, funded and enforced. But not everyone agreed. A group of parents claimed the bill shamed their children, including the families of Trevor and Lexi. A public hearing was held. Tensions exploded. But then Jonah, Elijah's best friend, now a disability rights advocate, took the stand and played a voicemail he received from James the year before. In it, James simply said, "You don't have to be perfect to be someone's hero. You just have to be there." The room fell silent. The bill passed. Unanimously. In 2027, James was posthumously awarded an honorary degree from UCLA, the university he had once dreamed of attending. His mother wheeled his empty chair across the stage to a full auditorium standing on its feet, clapping for over 5 minutes. His yellow hoodie had been preserved and was worn on stage by Alora, the scholarship winner from Part 4. She whispered before the crowd. He didn't need legs to stand. He had wings. That same year, a new freshman at Jefferson High walked into class on the first day in a wheelchair. He was nervous. The room was silent. Then one girl stood. Then another. Soon the whole class was on their feet, applauding. On the whiteboard was written, "Welcome, Tyler. We fly together here." It had been 3 years since James's death. Mrs. Cartwright lived quietly now. She had moved to a smaller town, started working part-time at a library, and spoke only when invited to speak about disability awareness or bullying prevention. But on a rainy Thursday afternoon, someone knocked on her door. She opened it slowly, and there he stood. Trevor. Older. Gaunt. Trembling. "I know I don't deserve a second of your time," he said. "But I need to tell you what I never told James." She said nothing. Just moved aside. Trevor sat on her couch, hands shaking. He pulled a folded letter from his pocket. "I wrote this 100 times. Burned every draft. But this one, I kept." He read aloud. "James, you were kind when no one else was. You talked to me when I didn't even like myself. And I repaid you with hate because I thought that would make me strong. You didn't die because of one fall. You died because people like me didn't stop the first time. Or the 10th. I live every day in that moment. Watching your eyes after we pulled the chair. It was the last thing I saw before I broke. I don't expect forgiveness. But I promise, your name won't die in my silence. I'm sorry. Trevor." Mrs. Cartwright listened, tears sliding silently down her face. After a long pause, she whispered, "You can leave it on the shelf with the others." Trevor looked up. The shelf above James's bed. There were dozens of letters. From bullies. From classmates. From strangers. Each one addressed to James. Each one a confession. Thousands of miles away, Lexi sat alone in a rehab facility in Arizona. She had checked herself in months ago after an overdose. The staff knew her only as Carla. But one evening, during a group therapy session, she finally said her real name. "I was Lexi Caldwell. And I killed someone." Gasps. Confusion. Silence. And then she continued. "But he left me something. His voice. His courage. And it's the only thing that's kept me alive this long." Later, in her room, she recorded a video on an old flip phone. "James, I don't know where you are. But I hope you see that I'm not running anymore. I won't hide from what I did. I won't let my shame be louder than your strength. I'm still sorry. Every day. And I always will be. I'm going to speak. In your name. In mine. For everyone who couldn't." The video went viral weeks later under the title, "I Was the Bully. This is what I need you to know." James's Wings was now an international organization. It had chapters in 31 countries. Volunteers in Ghana were fitting wheelchairs with solar charging panels. Schools in Japan were rewriting textbooks to include James's story. A girl in Brazil painted a 40-foot mural of James with wings made of books. A boy in Pakistan built a ramp system in his village and named it the James Way. The world hadn't just remembered him. They had become him. At Jefferson High, the original statue of James was visited daily. People left flowers, letters, even tiny wheels and wings made of paper. But the school had added something new. A second statue. It showed a different boy. Trevor. Not smiling. Not forgiven. Just learning. The plaque read, "Everyone can fall. Few ever stand up the right way." Some protested it. Some demanded it be taken down. But Mrs. Cartwright had approved it. Because James once wrote, "Forgiveness is a door. You still have to knock. And wait. And hope." The auditorium was packed. It was the 2028 graduating class. The first full class to attend all 4 years after the James's Wings law had been implemented. On every seat, there was a paper feather. A student speaker, a girl in braces who used a speech device, stood at the podium. Her voice was robotic but full of emotion. "We weren't better students because of James, we were better people. We learned that silence isn't safety. And courage doesn't always have legs." Everyone stood. No one clapped. Just silence. A tribute. Then, one by one, they released the paper feathers into the air. They flew. And landed on the stage. Mrs. Cartwright wrote a memoir. Even Wings Break. A mother's story. It was a bestseller. But more than that, it became a manual for schools, parents, and survivors. In it, she wrote, "You don't stop grieving. You grow around the grief. Like moss on stone. You let the pain make room for action. You let the memory plant seeds. And when the world says, 'Move on,' you say, 'I'll move forward. But I take him with me.'" Some say heaven is golden gates. Some say it's eternal peace. But if heaven is real, James is there. Not walking. Flying. Not because he left pain behind. But because the world finally heard his voice. And listened. If you've watched this far, this story was never just about James. It's about you. You who were bullied. You who bullied and regret it. You who stayed silent. You who finally spoke. You who are still in pain. You who are trying to find your wings. James didn't die so we could be sad. He lived so we could be brave. And now, it's your turn. Tell someone. Help someone. Be someone. The next James is out there. Let him fly. End of story. They regretted it too late. The boy in the wheelchair they all bullied. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, share it. You might save someone's life.